The room is quiet tonight. Not the dramatic kind of quiet people talk about in stories. Just the ordinary kind, the refrigerator humming softly in the kitchen, a car passing somewhere down the street, the slow ticking of a clock I keep meaning to replace, but never do. It's late enough that the world has mostly stepped away from me, and in that quiet, my thoughts tend to find you. Not in a painful way, not anymore, just shh. Not in a painful way, not anymore. Just the way certain memories return when the room is still, and there's nothing left competing for attention. I remember the first time I noticed the difference between us. Not in personality, not in the way we talked or laughed or understood each other. Just time. You had lived more of it. A few more years, a few more chapters, a few more quiet experiences that shaped the way you looked at things. At first, I thought I would feel smaller because of that. I didn't. If anything, I felt calmer. You carried yourself differently than most people around me. There was a steadiness there. Not the loud kind people try to perform, but the quiet kind that only comes from having already asked yourself certain questions about life. You didn't rush conversations. You didn't fill silence just to avoid it. And I noticed that almost immediately. I've spent most of my life surrounded by movement, decisions, responsibilities, people needing answers faster than they probably should. A world where everything feels like it's happening slightly ahead of the moment you're actually living. But when I was sitting with you, things slowed down. Not because you forced them to, just because you existed that way. I remember a small moment once, nothing special on the surface. We were sitting in your living room late in the evening. A lamp on the side table was the only light in the room. You were reading something on your phone. I was pretending to read something on mine. But mostly we were just sitting there. And after a while, you said almost casually, "You were thinking too much again." You didn't even look up when you said it. You just knew. That was the thing about you. You noticed the quiet parts of people, not the performance they show the world, but the parts that show up when the performance stops. I think that's when my heart really began leaning toward you. Not because you were older, not because you had lived more, but because you seemed to understand the weight of living. Without turning it into something heavy, you made space for things to simply be. And for someone like me, that was rare. There's something people don't often talk about when two people fall into something real. The outside world always wants to measure it. They measure ages, timing, circumstances, expectations, all the visible things that can be written down and debated. But the heart doesn't measure like that. It recognizes familiarity, safety, a strange sense that someone has been walking a similar road, even if they started earlier or later. You never tried to be younger than you were. I respected that. You didn't hide your experiences or smooth out your past to make it easier for someone else to accept. You spoke about life the way people do when they've already made peace with parts of it. That honesty made it easier for me to be honest too. And maybe that's why I felt comfortable with you in ways that surprised me. I could sit in silence beside you and not feel like I needed to explain who I was. You already seemed to understand. I think about small details sometimes. The way you folded your hands when you were thinking. The quiet laugh you had when something amused you, but didn't quite deserve a full reaction. The way you would pause before answering a serious question, not because you didn't know the answer, but because you respected the weight of the conversation. Those moments stay with me more than anything dramatic ever could. People often assume love is defined by big gestures, trips, celebrations, turning points. But the truth is, most of the things that mattered between us were incredibly ordinary. Walking through a grocery store and debating which fruit looked less disappointing, sitting in the car a few minutes longer than necessary because neither of us felt like ending the conversation. The quiet ritual of making tea late at night. Those moments built something, slowly, without either of us announcing it. I know there were people who looked at us and quietly wondered about the difference in years. You never mentioned it much, but I could tell you were aware of it. Sometimes it appeared in the way you hesitated before saying certain things, as if you were checking whether your experience might sound like advice instead of conversation. You never lectured me. You never positioned yourself above me. And that mattered more than you probably realized. Because love doesn't grow well in imbalance. It grows in mutual respect. I admired the way you carried your past. Not proudly. Not apologetically. Just honestly. You had lived through things that changed you. But you didn't use those things as armor. You let them exist as part of you. And I think my heart responded to that. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Still, there were moments I didn't fully understand while we were together. Moments where you seemed distant for reasons I couldn't quite name. Back then, I thought it was something I had done. It took time, long after we had gone our separate ways, to realize it wasn't about me at all. You had already learned certain lessons about life, certain lessons about timing, about how people move through each other's lives for reasons that aren't always permanent. I think part of you understood something earlier than I did, that sometimes love appears not to stay forever, but to change the direction of a life quietly. At the time, I resisted that idea. I thought love was supposed to hold things together. Now I understand it sometimes prepares people for the parts of themselves they haven't met yet. After you were gone, I noticed small things about myself, ways I had changed without realizing it. I listened more. I rushed decisions less. I started allowing silence to exist in my life without trying to fill it immediately. Those were things I learned from you, even though you never sat me down and taught them. They simply happened because I had spent time near someone who lived that way, and that's one of the strange gifts people can leave behind. Not memories of events, but shifts in how you move through the world. I don't think about you with regret. That might sound surprising, but regret suggests something went wrong. What we had wasn't wrong. It simply belonged to a particular moment in both of our lives. Sometimes I wonder if you knew that from the beginning, if you sensed that our connection would be meaningful, even if it wasn't permanent. You were always better than me at recognizing the shape of things before they fully formed. I was still learning how to see like that. But I'm grateful now. Grateful that my heart chose someone who had already learned how to be gentle with life. Even if it meant our paths eventually separating. The clock in this room is still ticking. The refrigerator still hums in the background. I am tea. Any refrigerator still hums in the background. Outside, another car passes, tires brushing against the pavement. The night continues exactly the way nights always do, and somewhere out so. Tea there, you're living your life. Probably the same way you always did. Quietly, thoughtfully, paying attention to small things most people miss. I don't need anything from you now. Not answers. Not explanations. Just the quiet acknowledgement that for a while, our lives overlapped in a way that mattered, and that sometimes the heart chooses someone not because of numbers or timing, but because, for a brief and meaningful stretch of life, they understood each other. Tonight, that thought feels enough, so I let the room stay quiet, and I let the memory rest exactly where it belongs. Exactly where it belongs.